Conker's Bad Fur Day has us meeting one trio who to me is a little bit more entertaining and a whole lot more funny than everybody else. Now before we meet Franky and his friends, we walk into the barn and we see all these little bales of hay just hopping around, wandering absolutely aimlessly. Of course, Conker is on the search for this really neat thing that Jack told him was going to be inside of this barn. He expresses a little bit of disgust to these guys. He says, hey, you know, where's this really neat thing? Unless, of course, a bunch of guys jumping around smelling like horse poo is this neat thing. And of course, he doesn't think it is. So the hay bales respond with, yeah, this is pretty neat. And then the door closes and locks behind you and you can't leave the barn. So then when you walk across the barn, you get to encounter Franky, Ron, and Reg, the barn boys. Franky is the pitchfork, Ron and Reg are the paint pot and the paintbrush. And honestly, I don't know which one's Ron and which one's Reg, but that's the guys. They started talking like, oh, whose turn is it to kick his ass? Hey, Franky, it's your turn. You got to go kick his ass. And then Franky's like, well, I'm not kicking everybody's ass. It's always my turn to kick people's ass. And so then Ron and Reg start making their excuses as to why they can't go kick his ass, is because, you know, I'm a paint pot and I'm a paintbrush and shit. And then Franky's like, well, I'm not going to just go over there. He's going to have to come over here. And so then they just kind of go still and wait for Conker to walk up, which of course is exactly what you do. And when you walk up to him, Franky jumps out and he confronts Conker and he is ready to kick some ass. Of course, Conker's absolutely blown away by this. It's a talking pitchfork and he kind of teases him a little bit. He's like, ah, I'm from the century and stuff. And Franky is pissed. He's like, I'm going to whoop you all around this barn. I'm gonna stick my big fork right into you, which is hilarious, honestly. Totally a little bit of potty humor there, top-notch potty humor nonetheless. And of course, Conker continues to tease Franky and accuses him of being the product of inbreeding, which naturally only makes Franky a lot more angry. As Franky chases you around the barn trying to stick his big fork in you gotta lure him into actually sticking his big fork into these hay bales instead, which is hilarious because they leave behind these little eyeballs when they get hit. After you've cleared up all the hay bales, then Franky goes back over to Ron and Reg, and they just start absolutely tearing him apart for giving you the worst, crappiest, crappiest ass whooping that they've ever seen. And this part is so funny because they are so mean to him, but then it goes dark and they like start telling him that he should go kill himself, which of course we don't joke about that stuff nowadays, but back then they certainly did. And poor Franky decided that he was gonna do so, and he goes to the top of the barn and he tries to hang himself, only to find himself teased and made fun of more because he doesn't have a neck, he doesn't have an esophagus or anything, so he can't actually hang himself, and now poor guy is just stuck there. So Franky, in the depths of depression, the verge of taking his own life, is now the butt of another joke. Poor Franky. He just hangs there in utter despair and disbelief as he grapples with the cold, hard reality that now he's just stuck there for who knows how long. Of course, this is not the end for our friend Franky, and his redemption is yet to come. But if you're enjoying this video, I'd like to ask that you hit that like button. And if you would like some more of these bite-sized deep dives into these old games like this, consider subscribing to the channel. I would really appreciate the support. Let's get back to it. So to carry on with the story, you have to pull this big lever, which dumps the king bee out on his ass, and then Conker turns around and he leaves the barn, and that's when this giant monster hay bale jumps down from the ceiling, and he's like, my nemesis is defeated, and decides that he's gonna basically stomp around the barn and be nuts. He even says, time to wander around aimlessly, and it's like super funny but also super weird at the same time, and it shows you that Reg and Ron are both scared of him. So this shows you clearly that like Franky had a purpose. Franky was a badass motherfucker that kept this giant freak at bay, and that makes him super cool. He's just lost his way a little bit and he needs a little help. So against everything that Conker usually does, he's gonna help him out. Once you've worked your way to the top of the barn and you get inside, you're instantly greeted by these two little bats who are talking shit about Conker. And what they'll do is, as you walk along this really narrow beam, they'll swoop at you and try to knock you down, so you have to start over. So when they do that, Conker gets a little light bulb above his head, and if you press B just in time, he'll whip out a flamethrower and burn them, and they'll fall to the ground. They even have a cute little death animation. And when you get to the other end, if you want to, you can look around and throw throwing knives at any bats that are left. Then what you gotta do is you gotta turn around, you gotta whip some throwing knives at Franky until a little animation starts where it shows Conker throwing a whole bunch, just knife after knife after knife after knife, and just missing him. And Franky's like, you know, dodging, trying to miss him and stuff. And then finally one of them cuts the rope, and Franky's like, uh-oh. And then he falls to the ground, which leads to Ron and Reg giving you a bunch of shit because they thought it was so funny that poor Franky was hanging from the ceiling. This triggers what I think is one of the funniest sequences in the game, where the guy, the paint pot, I don't remember which one's Ron and which one's Reg, but the paint pot is pissed that the paintbrush repeats everything he says. And the paintbrush is like, I don't do that. And then he kind of realizes that he does. But anyways, then Franky comes up to you and he expresses his eternal gratitude for saving his life. And he's like super friendly and he just loves Conker now. Which honestly, it's probably not the best move for Franky because of some of the other shit we've seen Conker get away with. He's probably lucky he doesn't end up in a wood chipper. Instead, him and Conker end up teaming up to take on this stupid hay bale thing. And this actually ends up being a really fun part of the game. But before you can get around to that, Conker has to take care of something with Reg and Ron because they've been doing nothing but talking shit, and it's high time they got what they deserved. Once that's taken care of, Franky says go ahead and hop on his back. Of course, Conker makes it weird and he's like, okay, but this is just a means to an end. And, you know, Franky's just trying to be helpful. He doesn't even know why Conker's being weird about it. But regardless, he's ready to jump in and be a hero. So you ride around on Franky like he is a pogo stick. And you have to get up to this bale of hay and you like slide across the ground and it makes sparks which catch the hay bale on fire. And unlike the second attack, it shows like a robotic eye burn out of the hay bale, which then zooms in on Conker and it scans him and it locks in on him. And it's really creepy. Everything's red. And it goes into this like Terminator mode and he's like, buff you asshole. And then you hit him one more time and this dude goes into a fit of rage and he's jumping around. It sounds like somebody's pounding on the floor really hard. And then finally the floor collapses and Conker, the giant bale of hay, and my awesome buddy Franky all go falling down into a deep dark pit. And in the matter of just a handful of minutes, Franky has gone from being this angry, stupid hick who wants to kick your ass to this depressed, desperate soul trying to end himself to a hero who has helped us defeat this monstrous hay bale. And now he has been redeemed. And he is going to help Conker out even more down in this hole. But we'll get to that part in a future video. For now, if you enjoyed what you saw here, consider clicking on this video for another little nostalgic tidbit from either this game or another, depending on what I put here, and I'll see you guys in the next video.